Today I am joined by Richard Collins, aka Richard Physique Code, as his Instagram handle. Richard is one of my favorite online coaches, purely from the fact that he puts out great content aimed at being a good coach, which is a vastly underrated skill. He's also got some of the best written Instagram content I can think of, and his posts often go viral. Today we talk about his skill at writing, how to communicate effectively, the hard and soft skills of coaching, how to actually be a better coach, why you may find there's some huge practical takeaways in terms of having some gym experience on the gym floor as a PT before you go solely online. And I think for any coach, anyone who's looking to upskill themselves, certainly people who are looking to get in the online coaching space and have purely got that evidence-based background, I think there's some huge practical takeaways from this episode in terms of how to improve your coaching skill. So I really hope you take a lot from it. Hope you enjoy it. Please like, share, subscribe, and I look forward to enjoying the episode. Rich, how you doing? Thank you for joining me today, mate. I know we had a little chat before we got on here, but thank you for coming on. How you doing?
I appreciate it, man. It's going to be fun.
I mean, we're just chatting absolute garbage before we started, so hopefully we're going to continue that theme. So I really wanted to get you on, man, because we've obviously chatted quite a lot over Instagram. I absolutely love the content that you put out, like all your written content, all the stuff that you put out on your page, and I love it for a couple of reasons. And this isn't me just blowing smoke as well. I love it because, firstly, I vibe with it and it's really well written. But also, you're coming at things from like a different way within the community. Obviously, you're from like a very sporting background and things like that, but it comes across so much more about the coaching side of things rather than just like do this and treating all your clients like robots. And that's something I've spoken about loads. But I just absolutely love how you sort of put yourself out into the industry, and it's just a breath of fresh air within that social media world. So I just wanted to chat to you about a couple topics today, just kind of like basically just chat shit, see where it went. Because I think a lot of people are going to take a lot of benefit from just seeing how you coach your athletes and that slightly different methodology rather than just your standard bodybuilding trope.
Yeah, man, let's do it. I'm excited.
So I've got a couple of like key things I want to talk about. So first thing I want to say really was, who do you kind of work with, and what's your view of like the coaching landscape of that like demographic?
So it generally over the years it's changed. I've been coaching for about just under 18 years now.
How old are
17
you?
years now. 36 this year.
Same as me, man.
Yeah. So we
Bit
can
older
discuss
shit.
that. Yeah. So I've gone through different periods. I actually started my career working in sport. So my background was in sport development. So I sort of went through in Australia, the Australian rules football, and I was working with semi-professional and professional athletes. My teacher was the head of strength and conditioning at one of the big clubs here in Australia, and I got to mentor under him and then do a lot of work for 4 or 5 years within those clubs. So it sort of started as coaching, I guess, elite athletes, which is very different than most coaches. Most coaches obviously don't come in and do that. So I was really lucky to be, in that environment and learning what sort of high performance is and what it actually looks like firsthand. And then when I sort of transitioned away from that, I was working a lot more with just general population. I started working at a commercial gym, and from there forward, I've been working with probably 60 to 70% are general population. And then over time, I had a few, the story of somebody wants to do a bodybuilding show, they do really well, and then you get a few other people that want to come in and coach with you, and that whole domino effect. And I ended up, finding myself not on purpose, but just finding myself coaching a lot of bodybuilding competitors. But yeah, so for the last 14 years, I've essentially done predominantly general population and bodybuilding, body composition coaching. And I still do a handful of, so I play basketball at quite a high level. I still coach quite a few basketball players that are semi-professional and professional. So a few of those because I really do enjoy that. But generally for my coaching, that's sort of how my career has evolved. And I've ended up, with body composition for general populations, and I'm still doing a few bodybuilders here and there.
It's weird. It's exactly the same sort of route that I took in, and maybe that's why we kind of like mesh our ideas quite well, So in
But
terms of like now, what's your percentage split from like Gen Pop to sport to bodybuilders?
I would say I'll put bodybuilders and sport together.
Yeah,
Not that, I necessarily consider bodybuilding a sport. So there's your first
yeah,
controversial topic.
everyone's gonna start
Yeah.
kicking off now.
Yeah. But yeah, so performance athletes, I
Yeah,
probably would have about 25%.
yeah,
Uh, and then, 75% are still similar to goals, performance, body composition, but they're sort of more lifestyle clients.
yeah. Like looks slightly less intense on the application. Okay, so I guess like that leads us. I think at least know who you work with. So let's talk about obviously social media is an interesting place. I was trying to think of a nice way to say that. It's an interesting place, right? Everyone's got an opinion. What's your views on that like current coaching landscape? Do you see it like worldwide differ to Australia where you're based, or what's your kind of like what's the good and bad side that you see?
Well, I mean, like, there's for every negative, there's five positives I look
Yeah.
at. I think it's allowed online training to boom, which I think has been in some ways good, but also in some ways bad for the personal training industry. I think, being when you do the job well and when coaches are doing the job really well, it provides, you don't have to just go to your local gym and that's pretty much your choice of coach.
Mm.
You're able to look around and see more and more coaches doing great things. And then you have the opportunity to coach with them online if you sort of mesh with their content ideas and you like the results that they're getting. So I think that's a really good thing. But you're always going to get a few of the bad things, right? Where like you're getting, people just trying to make a mockery of it. It becomes very easy to be very charismatic and market and be full of shit, essentially. So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So like,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
for
yeah.
every good coach you have coming out, there might be more bad ones. And it's, if you don't have a in-depth understanding of like the personal training industry or fitness and health and body composition in general, it can be really confusing for people to want to go and coach, to go find what separates a good coach and a fraud essentially. So I think, that's a big issue that we're facing right now, which, I don't want to sit there and say it's producing tons of really shitty coaches, but at the same time, it's like, there's a lot of amazing coaches that online coaching is done amazingly well.
Yeah.
But for every one of those that you get, you might have 10 people camouflaging you with absolute garbage that, so it makes it hard for consumers to be able to pick and be successful and not want to give up on their health and fitness goals.
Yeah, I think I see that quite a lot where you've got because online coaching is quite lucrative, or at least viewed as lucrative, you get a lot of people who perhaps haven't got that level of experience go into it, and maybe they've got a really good physique or a great Instagram following, and they don't really know that much, and they're just marketing the hell out of it. And the front end, like the sales funnel side of things, is great, but they can't get results. Or the other side that you mentioned was the online community. For the most part, I would say like it's like the rest of the world. Most of it is great. I met you online, I met loads of my friends online, speak to a load of great coaches. But there's also a small percentage of that community that just like to chat shit. I was going to say in a nicer way, but essentially just chat shit. We were talking about this before we got on. I won't name any names, but people have like slagged you off. I get it, and you think that you're only doing that because you're obviously doing well, right? And they're looking to maybe use you to get a bit of a boost and drive engagement their way. So I do kind of see like the positives, like you say, you've got access to all these great coaches, but you've also got the side where potentially the coaching quality isn't great because it's been flooded with people that maybe haven't got that level of. You've been doing this for 18 years, right? Not many people have got that the experience you've got, or you've got people that just like to argue. So it's a it's a pro con. It's a pro con. So I think that how have you kind of like personally navigated that? Like what's allowed you? Because I would say every time I go on Instagram, I see people resharing your stuff. What's allowed you to like navigate that successfully?
Part of me likes to think that it's pure luck. Part of me likes to
I'm
think
gonna
that,
call bullshit on that one, Rich.
yeah, I don't know,
I've got my
man. Like,
opinion on it, but I want
yeah.
you talk first.
Yeah. So look, I think with my content, it's a little bit, it's worded quite well.
Mm.
I do, give myself a shout out there. It's worded quite
Hey,
well.
I've
Uh,
already picked you up, mate. You crack on.
yeah, yeah. So, and I think as well, like it's one of the things that happens on social media is like people post trending content because they see somebody else be successful with it, and then they try to copy that style to go on and
Yeah.
write. And then what they don't realize is like when you write like it's a list, or you write like a textbook, or you're posting something that's, you're like, oh, I saw XYZ do this post, so I'm going to do one that's exactly similar.
Mm.
And you got thousands and thousands of coaches trying to do the thing. Like it just kind of gets lost a little bit. Whereas I think from mine, like my content comes from, like I don't really scroll other coaches' posts that much. Like
Yeah.
I've just never done it. And so like mine is sort of like, I like to say like in the trenches, but that sounds kind of like fucking lame, but it is. So yeah, so it's like I might have a question from a client, and I'll be like, fuck, you know what? If that person has that question, there's probably thousands of other ones that do. And then I'll go on there and I'll word it in a way that it's not answering a question, but I'll just bring that topic to life. Um, or it might just be things that are, like I'm one of those people that like I pick and prod at things like with details. So like I might look at two athletes and be like, they got a lot of similarities, and I'll work out one thing that works really well for them, and I'll try it on the other one because I think they're quite similar in mindset. And I sometimes I start seeing patterns, and there's a lot of patterns that I see with elite athletes, which is one of the we can go into that in a little bit, but one
Mm.
of the things that I quite frequently talk on is because I look at trending patterns. So like a lot of the stuff, I'm not like looking and being like, oh fuck, what should I post for content? It's like I try to tell people like my Instagram is just a diary of my thoughts. Like I don't have any marketing strategy. There's nothing like that. I've literally just gone, you know what, this is going to be a page that I just express myself on. And I think it's related to a lot of coaches because it's all very authentic. And I
Yeah.
think that, I think that's why it's done well, because it's very different to what a lot of people do. And it is, to me, I like to think anyway, it's very, very authentic. Like you're not going to see too many similar posts to it.
No, I would. Where I think about your sort of stuff is you've clearly done it, and for me, one thing I've always tried to do with my own content, and you do this really well, is you take a concept and make it as simple as possible. It's not a dick measuring contest. You're not like, look how fucking smart I am. You're a coach. And that's the way I like it, is you're taking a concept and going, this is a simplistic way of viewing this thing, because I've clearly done it and I've taught people this. And so for me, when I read your stuff, I'm like, you've taught people this. This isn't something you've read out of a textbook and gone, there you go, that'll do. You've explained that to people before, and that comes across in the way you write. And you know who Alex Hormozy is, right?
I know who it is. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big business. He writes his, like, on his Twitter is all like these notes to self, and I kind of see that. I'm not saying you're Alex Hormozy, man. I'm just,
I'll
but
take that if you
I'll
say
take it.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the way I kind of see it with you. Is like these are kind of almost notes to self that's going to help other people, and it's these little like well-written comments that someone's going to take some value from. And we actually had a chat a couple of weeks ago, do you remember, when we were talking about people like stealing our work? And there's a part of me that gets pissed off about it when it's like direct copy of like original thought. But the other side of me is going, they can't be you. They're not going to be you. But they, at the very best, this is something that I heard Alex Hormozy talk about, is at the very best they can be like a copy of you, but they're always going to be behind because you've got to put out the original thought. So like I like that with your stuff, is because you're not copying anyone, you're just doing what you do. And I think that comes across as authentic, someone who's done it, all that sort of stuff. And I think that's probably a bit of a guide to other coaches that are in the industry. Like everyone copies everyone's shit. go and look at any bodybuilding coach. It's the same content, and it's easy to fall into that trap. Whereas like you've come from a coaching standpoint, that's what I want to go into as well. You've come from this background of like, it's not necessarily a science background, obviously, that you're still educated. It's more about the science and art of coaching. And that's what comes across to me. So yeah, I see that a lot with your stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I think like as well, when you come back to the art of it and stuff like that, like it's a huge thing. To me, coaching has always been like 80% psychology.
Mm.
Um, and it's funny because like people will say, oh yeah, but when you have more advanced athletes, you need to use like more advanced. And it's like, see, I look at not just in bodybuilding, not pro athletes in bodybuilding, but pro athletes in Australian football, pro athletes in basketball, and they just do the basics really well.
Yeah, really
Like, you know,
fucking well.
there might be a few things in there that are potentially a little bit more advanced, but while it is advanced, it's the most simplified version of what we're
Yeah.
trying to do.
Well,
And I think that that's like, you know, in terms of the hard skills, which is what I sort of classify like programming and things like that, and exercise technique. And it's like, you just have to be good enough, right? And it's
yeah.
like 95% of people that you will, unless you're a pure bodybuilding coach that coaches, you know, like a Dean McKillop kind of
Yeah.
thing, or
I was about to say
Joe,
Dean, actually. Yeah, Joe and
yeah,
Dean.
Dean or Joe or someone like that, right? A little bit different story. But for the majority of coaches, I'd say 99% of them, right? If you get better at dealing with people and understanding how to create adherence, and like a lot of people are kind of just breeze past it and they just want to look at like, oh, we need to look at more of the hard skills. And it's like the best coaches are the best communicators. Like there's just no question around it. Like even the coaches that are great with hard skills, like you look at Dean is phenomenal with communication, absolutely phenomenal, right? Any look, you know, Dr. Mike Israetel, when he was coaching, another reason why he became so successful, he's one of the best talkers. Like him on a podcast is like
Fucking
unbeatable.
hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, and like they're just so good at talking to people. And a lot of those things kind of get lost when you haven't done the coaching.
I'm
Like,
glad you said about the it's good enough. I always talk about like height in the NBA. When you're
yeah,
not tall enough, everyone's all they're doing is stressing about it. But when you're tall enough, no one gives a fuck. And
yeah,
it's the same for like, at what point is your biomechanics knowledge enough? Right? What
yeah,
point is your drug knowledge enough? There's plenty of people that's smarter than me, but is that going to make them a better coach? And it's like, push the lever that's going to give you the biggest ROI. And obviously, we've both worked in sport. And the thing that fucks me off the most about coaching is when people go optimal. And I'm guilty of it as well. I'm always looking for the best, but optimal has become this buzzword. But no one, no one in rugby, cricket, football, basketball is going optimal game plan because it doesn't exist. It's like, what happens when you get punched in the face or the game starts? How do you adapt to that? And that's coaching. And that's the thing I always see so often is people are like, what's the most optimal approach? Like, fucking depends, doesn't it? But people want this pithy answer and they kind of
nothing.
avoid the fact that you've got to coach the person.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing's black and white. And, you know, I always sort of say to clients is like, anytime I hear like the optimal word popping up, right? It's like optimal is so context driven.
Mm,
Like, and it's so context driven by psychology as well.
yeah.
So like you can have the most perfect exercises in a sports science like in a sports science field. But if an athlete just doesn't enjoy doing them, they're not going to perform it that well, right? So things like that are just like, you know, they also come down to the whole adherence thing that I was talking about before,
Oh
right?
man,
Like,
so much. It's you talk about are you frozen? You frozen, Rich? Are you back? You froze for a second then. You were just like
oh,
frozen in time.
oh, my bad. Yeah. So, you know, it's just like those are the things that, you know, you don't really understand until you're coaching a lot in person is, like optimal looks different on every single person. Like optimal from a sports science side could potentially look, EMG readings or whatever it is. But then on top of that, like, it's like, okay, but I've got 3 clients that fucking hate squatting and they're scared of it and they've had a bad experience. Yes, squatting might be a, you know, optimal, great exercise for this person to do, but we're not going to do that because we're going to go to a split squat or whatever it might be
Yeah.
because they're going to enjoy it more. They feel more comfortable doing it. Therefore, they're going to push themselves a little bit harder. What's the optimal exercise now? And I think when you just go off sort of textbooks, then you miss that whole side of it, which is like the 80% of coaching.
100%. I see that like like the lengthened range of exercises obviously doing the rounds at the moment. Obviously, we've got to take that into account. And people say never reverse band anything. I'm like, if I did a reverse band hack squat, my knee's going to fly off. Like that's the only way I can do it with that pain. So it's like you weigh up. You have to have that conversation of going, what does optimal look like for that person? And for me, optimal is not losing a kneecap. Right? That's probably going to fuck me up a bit more than doing a reverse band. How much do you think your experience of actually training people in real life? Because again, everyone's an online coach, right? But I think they've missed this really key skill of actually looking someone in the eyes and getting them to move in a gym environment. How much do you think that people are missing out on that, or do you not think it's important at all? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's absolutely important. I think like when we're looking at the whole, coaching people online sort of thing is like you have a set, I can't remember, but there's like a set amount of cues that you have that you can do in person, which is like counter force and things like that. So like if somebody's struggling to move a certain way, for example, in person, one of the things you can do that I use a lot is like if I have like a beginner struggling to retract their shoulder blades on a seated row, you can sort of push the rhomboid in protraction and say, push against me.
Yeah.
And just that touch, they get that feel where they can pull things back. So there's so much of that sort of stuff there that are like in-person cues that you can't use online. And then when you actually have understandings of these things, like you get to play around with so many more cues. You get to learn what cues work better for people. You can look at different cues of internal and external cues that you can just talk to them without actually using physical touch. And you just miss all that when you don't coach in person, or you haven't coached in person. I find myself getting videos sent to me all the time. I use internal and external cues to talk them through how to do an exercise that, if I hadn't done in-person training, I would not even have known those. And I probably would be agitated as much as some of the online coaches are that they can't get their form right. So I think, there's a huge, huge, huge part of, being a good coach in person is going to help you be a much better coach online. So yeah, I
You've
think
got
it's
your
a
own facility as well, haven't you?
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got a small. There's no memberships or anything like that. It's just like a one-on-one studio. So we got 5 trainers at Physique Code. So
That's
it's
it.
just personal training sessions run through there. Yeah.
Because the other thing I found about a lot of online coaches is, let's say you're just coaching like a Gen Pop guy or girl, like you're giving them these exercise splits, and I've all seen it, and that's you're not thinking, because these guys are going to the gym after work most of the time. Gym is busy, and you're like, I want you to do this cuffed clavicular fly on the cable stack, and you're like, that's great. Like, I love that exercise. However, it's 7 p.m. The gym's the busiest it's ever going to be, and you've not had. You can clearly train. You can see you've never trained anyone, because you're picking an exercise which is the hardest fucking thing for them to actually practically do. And that's one of the things I think you wouldn't even program it because you just know. And that to me is another benefit of just coaching people. Like, this is the shit that people actually have to deal with. Like, optimal goes out the window.
It's like as well, right? Like people are programming supersets at 5 o'clock at a commercial gym, and it's like, bro, they can barely get any machine,
Yeah.
let alone have to superset 2 machines across the other gym. You get it as well. Like there's a few people, like I'm not gonna name names, but like there's a few coaches that will build programs for people that just clearly don't fucking train themselves either, because they're 66 sets in a workout and, you know,
Yeah.
8-hour workouts. And it's like, bro, have you ever actually like taken
Completed
a
this?
client through that session? Like, you
Yeah.
know, you're gonna, you know, you're gonna make like $100 a day because you're gonna be spending an entire day trying to work out this one person through 65 sets. Um, so, you know, and then even on a more simple sort of um on a more simple sort of note for that is like things like that, right? So all of that sort of stuff. One of the other big ones that I have personally is like some gyms, like the cable stacks are super heavy. So if you try to do lateral raises with it, like you may
Yeah.
get like somebody that's a little bit newer to the gym or somebody that's, you know, like if you get like a 50-kilo female or something like that, right? And the first plate is just too heavy for them to do it, right? So just knowing like, you know, I ask questions like, oh, where do you train at? And then I
Mm.
might go the equipment and just, you know, oh shit, it's a matrix stack. They're super heavy. Not even going to bother with that. But again, same sort of things that you just learn from coaching people in person that, you know, you can carry over to online.
I've got something that you might find as a gripe, because it's something I get annoyed about, right? Is, and I understand why people have got there. People look at exercises and they almost like look down the nose at it. And I'll give you an example, right? So you've got people that are doing cable laterals because it's got a better profile than say a dumbbell lateral. And you get people going, well, that's not optimal when someone's doing it with a dumbbell. But your example there is great. Say you've got someone who's just started the gym, potentially like let's say an elderly female. That actual single plate on the cable stack might be a barrier to entry. It might be the fact that she hasn't got a cuff. So her using the 2 kg dumbbells, who gives a shit if it's not the optimal resistance profile? And the bit I always try and get my head around, maybe this is my nerdy thing, is going, what's the percentile difference of net result? Right?
Yeah.
Like people go, that's not optimal. By how much? Because if it was 100% difference, I'd be like, well, obviously, right, pick one. But if it's 10%, pick the one you enjoy, or pick the one that's realistic. And that's my point. But I'll go on to gripes in a minute. That's probably my biggest gripe. Of people going, not optimal, mate. Sorry, like I might as well not bother then.
Yeah, I get a lot of my online clients that'll message me and be like, XYZ at the gym told me that I wasn't doing this properly. And it's like, look, man, honestly, like you're new to the gym and anything you do is going to be better than what you were previously doing. And that technique, could you make it from 90% to 100%? Potentially, yes, something that we can look at over time. But we're going to take the lowest hanging fruit here, and you're not injuring yourself. You're enjoying it, which I think is the main, you know,
Mm.
besides not injuring yourself is one of the most important things. You're able to load it. And just because technique might be tiny little bit off, nothing that's even, you know, unsafe, like don't fucking worry about it. Right. And it's like, these are all just things that we're going to progress with you over time.
Mm.
But it is right. It's the same sort of thing where it's like, what is the optimal way? It's like even if it's just exercise, sometimes it looks at like technique as well, and it's a similar sort of thing. And it's like, you know, fuck, like yes, their fucking leg press, their knees aren't coming into their chest, but they're going to be uncomfortable with that and they're going to hate the exercise. So are we happy starting at, you know, slightly below parallel? Absolutely. Is that going to
Mm.
help them? Absolutely it is. We have all the time in the world to, you know, progress it. Maybe she stalls at it and then we say, let's not increase the weight. Let's, you know, see if we can't pull your knees out a little bit wider and bring the weight down a little bit lower. And that's a perfectly acceptable progression to get somebody better. But yeah, you get the optimal crowd that's, you know, oh, I can't post that video because my technique was slight. And it's like, shut the fuck up. Like literally just, you know, the main thing for 99.9% of people that go to the gym is keeping them consistently in the gym and enjoying it.
Yeah, I
It's like
think
once you get that, you can then they're going to stay longer and then you've got time to start playing around with the small, you know, moving parts to it.
my favorite is when they take, because you could do that to the nth degree, right? I've seen people look at sort of, I don't know, Branch Warren's workout videos, and you could argue, yeah, maybe he could have a bit more control or whatever. And they go, oh, if only you'd done that, it'd be a better bodybuilder. what than someone who's on the Olympia stage multiple times. Like, it worked. People look at Usain Bolt and say, "Oh, he could have changed his sprint mechanics. Fastest dude ever. Oh, if Kobe only got more sleep, maybe he'd be better." You're like, he was still one of the greatest of all time. So I think, whilst yes, we always want to have that element of kind of going, is there something I can do better? Don't lose the wood for the trees. Like, they're still doing fucking well. You're getting results. And those whole arguments of like, oh, if only they'd done this, like, do you realize how fucking good they were? Like, because, like you said, they've got the ability to stay doing what they love for longer than anyone else. And they had obviously genetics and all that other shit, but they loved it and they went
It's
into
all
it.
context dependent, right? And that's why optimal to me doesn't like is different on every single person.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it's all context dependent. And I think if you don't really train people and you just kind of watch like N1 videos, then you know you may have your thought processes on it. And if that's what you want to do for your own training, cool, man. You know,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're in the fucking gym and training.
Mm.
But it's when people start trying to go to others and be like, you're doing this wrong. And it's like, dude, let these people fucking train, right? Like, let them improve and get better. And um, it really, I think coaches don't realize, like, I have this thing where me personally, it's like a, what did you say? Was it, what did it start with G? That's that word you said? Was it grime? Grim? That's, it must be an English word. I never heard that before.
Grime.
Yeah, I've never heard that
Grind.
before.
Or did I say grind or grime?
Did you mean grind?
I don't know what I said now.
Yeah. I don't know. That fucked me up before.
It might be
Anyway, so
grind. If I
those
say
things, right?
grind, I like work hard, and then grime is like rap music. I don't know what I fucking said now, bitch.
Okay, right. So no, it was something that annoyed you.
Oh, maybe a gripe.
I don't know.
A
Fuck 'em.
gripe's like, it's something that pisses me off. Yeah.
It might have been that. Yeah. And it's like, you know, stuff like that is like coaches, and this is one that really drives me nuts about social media. And I will drive back social media because if you get me ranting about that, I'll go
Mate,
crazy.
that's what I want. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
But like unsolicited advice from coaches is one
Yeah.
of the worst fucking things that you can do. And it's like, even if you're trying to help and you have good, like not everybody has good intentions with it.
Mm,
Like there's a lot of people that are like, oh, you should be doing this, and they're trying to get a client or
mm.
smash or whatever they're trying to do. But like there are people that do it with good intentions. And they're like, they may message you, be like, hey, you should do this, or you should try doing the exercise
Yeah.
this way. And they're trying to be really nice with it. Like they're not being rude or anything. But it's like unsolicited, like they don't know the full context of what they're doing, and then it confuses people, and then they get second guessing themselves. Oh, am
Yeah.
I not doing this right? Oh, is my coach not good? Oh, why should I be listening? And it really fucks with the athletes. And when I say athletes, this could be, you know, an elite athlete, this could be
Mm.
a beginner, especially a beginner. Um, and it's just one of the things that happens frequently on social media that just absolutely drives me up a fucking wall. It's like, don't go giving people advice, especially when you don't know the full context.
Yeah.
And it's usually the optimal crowd, um, you know, that's watched again, they've watched a fucking N1 video and all of a sudden they're, you know, going around finding all their friends' videos and trying to correct it. But you know, that really fucks with people. And even if you're trying and you have great intentions, it's a really fucking bad thing to do. And it's so common now on social media. Um, and there's one of the things that pisses me off.
I'm in complete agreement. I think it's very easy to sit there and criticize. And this is kind of where it's very easy to look at. You could look at any program I write and be like, why have you done it that way? But there's a quote, and I'm going to butcher this, but it's something like, if you knew everything they did, you would have done the same thing.
I like
Most
that.
likely, right? Because if you knew why I did that and the reasons behind it, again, all the context and nuance, you would have probably come to the same conclusion or similar, right? And I've got a really good example we always laugh about. So I used to work with Sophie Jenkins. She's an IFBB pro, and she's a freak, man. She's mate of mine. She's super cool, and she's a fucking unit, mate. She's a figure pro, awesome physique. And she was going for a bit of a tough time, and she could not eat. And I wrote her this meal plan. And if you'd seen it, like I would have been one of those guys that, like, blasted on the internet, mate. It was It was bread, pastries, like minimum amount, like greens, powders, because you couldn't eat any veg, fruit, anything like that. And but if you saw it written down, it was complete shit. But it allowed her to get the calories in, to progress her training, and it also wasn't fixed in time. Like it did a job for the period of time and the problems that we were facing. And we kind of laughed about it, but I was like, please don't show anyone this, because this is a fucking shambles. And now we show people before and we laugh about it because but we use it as an example for the exact reason. Someone could have looked at that and be like, you're the worst coach in the world. Who programs like this? I'm like, well, you don't know the problems that we were facing to get to that point. You don't know why you're doing a certain thing. And I think it's, like you say, very, very easy to criticize when you haven't got the context. And of course, with the optimal crowd, I also think you create this, I don't know what, an environment where people are scared to talk about their ideas. Like, we're very open in terms of we like to talk about what works for us. I've got a lot of friends I talk to as coaches, and we share ideas because there's no judgment there. We're like, I understand why you've done that. Unfortunately, the internet, to like put it as a global place, if you open yourself up, you open yourself up to criticism. People don't want that, and I think the more you talk about these things, the better everyone gets. And having a talk, because I guarantee we do things differently, but if I knew why you did it, I would buy into that.
Yeah.
So one
That's
of
one
the
of the
things
reasons I don't talk training so much. Like I don't talk about, so like whenever I coach or do any mentoring, like I always, again, like I said earlier, I separate everything into hard skills and soft skills. The soft skills is dealing with the people, hard skills is dealing with the like the programming and things like that. And I very rarely on my social media nowadays talk about hard skills for
yeah.
that reason. Right? Like I can't be fucked. And like I did one. No, because you got to deal with shit, right? Like I
Yeah,
did one hard skills post yesterday or the day before, and I was like, "Do deadlifts make your waist thick, or are the people that that you're looking at that have huge, like really thick waists, are they massive deadlifters because they were genetically built like that in the first place?" So
yeah.
it's like, listen to both sides of the story, and that was just an example of a hard skill thing. Oh my God. Like people start going in there and arguing and fighting in the comments, and it's just like, like it's just not worth it, right? So
No.
I think that's another reason why I went to um, coaching soft skills more, because the more I'm going to say, like, the more I do it and the more I watch and hear stories of clients coming in, coming to coach with this, and I always have a thing, like, I want to ask them, and it's like, why haven't you hit your goals previously? Or somebody had said, like, I don't want to know previous coaches, but I'll be like, oh, what was the reason that you left your previous coach? Because it could be something that I'm going to really dial in and make sure I do that well.
Yeah.
Right. And some of the like communication stuff, like 90% of people leave their clients not because of like programs or yada yada. It's like it's because of the soft skills. So like that's what also drives me to post a lot about it. And it's like people, like, how we were talking earlier about like posting trending stuff.
Yeah.
Like here's a list of 6 ways to improve your sleep, or here's a way, 6 ways. And like even the mindset stuff is just generic as fuck.
Yeah.
And like I can tell you read Kobe Bryant's book and this is what you're posting about. And like there's a lot of the coaches now that do the same thing. And it's like, oh, if you gotta want it bad enough, and the best in the world don't have balance, they have, everything. And it's like that. Like I work with some like incredibly successful professional athletes, like at the top of their sport. None of those people are like that. Like,
Yeah.
and it's like you guys are talking out of stuff that you've read. Like you don't know, I want to be able to be, I feel like you and I, and this is also why we connect really well, is like we're in a position where we've been able to be around elite athletes and we know what it's actually like, right? Like they're human beings and they're not any different to general population people. They just do the basics better for longer.
And they've
And
got unbelievable genetics.
yeah. Fuck yeah. I mean, especially in, bodybuilding and stuff like that. It's going to play basketball, bodybuilding, probably 2 of the most genetical sports in the world. But yeah, and it's like, these people don't, like the pro bodybuilders that I know and that I've done work with and pro basketball players are very similar in mindset, right? they're also like, it's the ones on the tiers underneath it that are the issues where they're, and when they're coaching people and they're like, you got to be fucking hardcore, you got to be 100% all in, fuck that, it's like you got to be on a meal plan 24, every day of the year, and you're like, no, you don't. Like these guys, like, yes, you're gonna have to obviously put in more, but this isn't how an elite mindset works. Like that's
Mhm.
actually that's a toxic, unhealthy. And there's so many, I can't speak for the rest of the world, but like there's so many high-level coaches in Australia that preach that stuff. And
I
it's
think,
like,
I'll be honest, I think I see it more in basketball than anything else. Like, I like to draw comparisons between to basketball, bodybuilding, and anything else. So, in any
right,
other sport, I think there's a better balance with everything. But in bodybuilding, it's work hard, or you're a pussy.
yeah,
And that to me, I can understand it, right? Because it's based on purely the aesthetic side of it. It's based purely on what you look like. People like to over dramatize hard work, and at the expense. This is why if you mention genetics, people lose their shit, because we're not. It's not a mutually exclusive conversation. It's like you can have amazing genetics and work really hard, but doesn't mean that hard work is the only metric that exists. And unfortunately, because you can't control your genetics, people say, well, I can control my effort, so therefore effort's the only thing that matters. And they say, well, if effort matters, then 100% effort is the only thing that matters. I'm like, well, yes and no. Like, if you take the extremes, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, you could take someone like um, Tiger Woods, these elite performers. Yes, they were like that. But could they have been like that? Not being like that? Because you look at someone like Chris Bumstead, who's again elite, like the fucking best. What?
the latest, yeah, right.
Yeah, you see him talk on a podcast. He's chill as fuck, right? And it's like, well, how are you so different then if you're achieving the same level? Because I would argue in their own respective fields, Bumstead's probably higher, right? And if he can be quite chilled, a decent, well, very like seems like a really level guy, you don't have to be like Tiger Woods. Maybe that's just their internal personality and they both got to the top. Doesn't mean that's the right way to be. And yeah, I think I'll tell you what I'm really interested in, Rich, and this is kind of what I wanted to speak to you about big time was we've spoken about soft skills being so underrated but so important. What would you say for like any new coach coming in or coaches that are listening to this? Can you give like maybe like two or three main takeaways of like the skills they need to develop to become the best coach and get the best out of their clients?
Well, the two best ones, and I'm going to take Brett Bartholomew's answer to this because it's the best one I've ever heard, is you've got to be very good at being empathetic.
Hmm.
And when I say empathetic, I think a lot of people get this sort of mindset with it where it's like babying people.
Yeah.
It's not. You just have to be able to listen and understand where they're coming from, and then, make choices off, okay, are they whining? Could
Hmm.
they be doing better? Or are these legitimate issues that we need to, well, we just have to work around that, and things like that. So I think being empathetic is really important, being a great listener. There's a quote, and I'm going to butcher this one as well. And I can't actually remember who said it. I will go back and find it. And it's like, I don't know what it is about talking, but it fucking feels good just to be heard.
I like that.
Yeah, and it's like one of my favorite, I'm a quote guy. It's like one of my
Yeah.
favorite quotes. And it's like if you just listen to clients, you can learn more about them to program them for them than any other question you're going to ask them, right? Sometimes the best thing is to just shut the fuck up and listen. Um, and they'll tell you things. Like one of the key things that I always use is like just leave a pause. So like sometimes, and this is like part of being empathetic, but like if they ask you a question or sorry, if you ask them a question and they answer it and you feel like there's more to it,
Hmm.
just don't say anything. Just wait like 5 or 6 seconds. And then they'll get not uncomfortable, but they'll go, oh, I need this. And then they just continue to go on. And all of a sudden you're just getting a whole bunch of new information that's probably going to change your program and plan. So I think that's really important, is just being a great listener and being empathetic towards your clients. And I think the second one is being authentic. I think you're far more relatable of a person when you're authentic. Or so like when you look at it, if you don't have the answer to a question, just fucking say it.
Mm.
Like, you're a human being, right? Like, nobody's a dictionary. At least once or twice a day, I'll say that. They'll be like, "Hey, I have this question about whatever food it is," and I'll be like, "Fuck, I don't know. I'll find out for you though."
Mm.
Or somebody might be talking about drugs and they'll ask me a drug question, and I'm like, "Dude, I don't really do that." I'll go message Matt and I'll ask
Mm.
him. And then, I'll go and ask you a question. You come back. All right. So I went and spoke, just things like that, right? Like,
Mm.
it just makes you more relatable. It humanizes you, and then it allows clients to not like push you up on this crazy pedestal, which I think a lot of coaches like, but I think it's a horrible thing. Like, I always look at
Yeah.
coaching as collaborating and problem solving. Like, that's all it is, in its core. Um, so even beginners, like, you're just collaborating with them. Like, they know themselves way better than you know them. So
Yeah.
you just have to know what they are doing and what they want, and then try to apply principles as best suited.
I
So
love
I,
that.
I
I love that listening part, man. That's I will say the biggest ROI thing I've ever done in check-ins, because we talked at the hard skills, and I think people massively overrate that. And obviously, we're not trying to underrate it. We're not saying it's not important, but like there's other things. Biggest thing I've had is I say to clients, "And how are you?" And it sounds so stupid. It's like, "And how are you?" At the end of a check-in, I say, "Just tell me how you are," because they might, on their sheet, it might say like zero stress, life's great, da 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 da. And they're like, "How are you?" They're like, "Oh yeah, I lost my job and my dog died." And you're like, "Fuck!" Like, firstly, that's fucking awful, but that's also gonna impact tons. Like, that's gonna impact your sleep, it's gonna impact your mood, it's gonna impact your stress. These are all factors that are then down. Not the fact that it's gonna make you feel shit as a person, which is obviously awful. You're my client, I want to help you, but also that is going to affect your progressions. Like, that might make you more susceptible to binging. If you're sleeping shit, your training might fall down, right? We need to make adjustments there. But it also, like you said, it humanizes you. You're now having that conversation. And I also heard the thing you said about, you ask and like, it's okay not to know. Coaching isn't memory recall. It's not a fucking test where you're like, right, I need to know everything else of shit. Like, I had a client say to me, he goes, "How do you know all this stuff on Q&As?" I said, "Bro, like, do you think hello, little thumbs up." I said, I only know this because I've got it wrong 100 times. So like, I've had to learn this. And like, the first time I got asked it, I was like, "I don't fucking know. I'll go and find out for you." But like, you get asked the same question 10 of the times, you're like, "Okay, maybe I know this now." It's not because I suddenly fucking, like, I'm a walking encyclopedia, and you, like, none of us are. Fuck this shit, I don't know all the time. How many times have I messaged you and be like, "Rich, what's that quote or what's that thing?" And like, don't be afraid to ask. But I think those are some really, really valuable skills, because you really, I know you're a big sort of like soft skill learning guy. What are those books? Because I think there's some books that you can recommend that is it Coach to Coach that you love?
Coach to Coach. So Coach to Coach is like, it's not a book that you're going to get a whole bunch of like education out of. It's a it's a story about a coach that he coaches a professional football team, and the team's failing, and he's worried he's going to get fired, and he doesn't have the strongest like talent on the team. And then an older coach from like generations ago, who was like one of the best coaches of all time from that university, comes back and kind of mentors him. And the book is like just a story of getting the team playing together, and like he just, he comes in and he's like, talk to the players, and he just gives so many lessons in the book. And it's a short read, it's a really easy read, and it's so motivating. And I think for me, it's like it just pulls back the essence of what coaching is, because I think right now, um, and I said this the other day, is like we're in the information era right now. So John Goodman, John Goodman?
Yeah, yeah, no job.
Yeah, he said
We're
one of my
showing our age now, bro. He was around when I was like
yeah, yeah.
18,
Oh,
20,
bro,
man.
yeah, yeah. He's like, he started online training.
Yeah.
He was the originator of online training. And he has a quote and he says, like, we're in the information era now. Information is no longer valuable. It's what you do with it. And I love that quote
Yeah.
because it's true. You can go online and you can get absolutely anything. Like anything that I know and teach my clients from hard skills, you can Google and you'll find maybe some bad, but you can also find that information there. And I think nowadays it's about what you do with the information, which is going to be soft skills. And I think that's what's, you know, the world is kind of moving towards hard skills. I think especially with online, it's like, yep, here's the numbers, like the emotion has been taken out of coaching. It's about getting, 30 people in and we can charge X amount of money and we're gonna make this amount of money each week. And then they set up a check-in form and it's like there's no emotional attachment. And I think that's the coach to coach book, coming back to it, is like any coach that's in that sort of position, I generally tell to read because it brings coaching back to at its core what it actually is. And I think every coach that I've given that to has gone, I'm so far off the track right now of what I should be doing to be a good coach. And it's just a
Yeah.
fictional story. It's like 150 pages or whatever. But like the lessons that they teach in there, and it's like this is applicable whether you coach sport, general population, bodybuilders, any of those sort of things. And it's like, so that's why I really like that book. So you're not going to get any like super crazy educational content on it, but it is a book that if it refreshes you on what we actually do as a job and what, at the core, what we need to be doing and providing. So that book, Coach to Coach by Martin Rooney, fucking incredible.
Have you ever seen Ted Lasso?
You know what? I haven't.
It's set. It's basically set. It's American coach comes over. He's never coached football before, like soccer, and it's a comedy series, and he gets put in charge of this like fictional football team, and essentially he is just a coach. All he cares about is the players, trying to get them, and it's a set over 3 series, and how he takes them from this club, which is a bit of a joke, to basically like they get relegated, and he brings them back up, and it's basically, I won't ruin it if anyone hasn't watched it, but it's really heartwarming, but it's also a really good example of what coaching is. It's getting the best out of that person. And I think I always make the joke, your clients aren't robots. And with the information age, everyone's going, this drug stat, this program, this. And it's like, if they can't do it, who fucking cares? Right? That's the thing that's going to hold them back. Like, we all know what to do. And the great example again is football. How many times have you seen the same players go to a different, like as in a new coach takes over and all of a sudden they're exceptional or they're bad? The players didn't change, their skills didn't change, their ability to kick a football or shoot a basketball or whatever hasn't changed. Their environment has, and the person speaking to them has changed. So therefore we can see the power of that thing. And this is the biggest reason I wanted to get you on, was all the hard skills are so important but overrated, and the soft skills are so underrated. One thing I wanted to speak to you about as well, the way you write. We said we're gonna chat about this one because I think it's so good.
Yeah.
Your ability to communicate, I love it. Where did that come from? Where can guys improve that? Because I think that also goes across to the way you communicate yourself verbally. How have you improved that skill over time of writing and talking to people?
Well, I think the writing one it's interesting, right? Because like in high school, I was good at 2 things and I was terrible at the rest. So I was good at English and I was good at PE. So the only 2 things I was really good at. And I was in like, I think like in Australia, we have like the year 12 scores, in each subject would go out of 50. And I think I was at like 49.3 in English. So again, I think it might be a little bit of a genetic thing.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but yeah, it's the same with bodybuilding, right? Like, but writing has always been something that I've really enjoyed, and I've always done it in some way, shape, or form. And like, I'm the weird person that like I will listen to like Eminem and I'll go back and I'll start watching like how he's rhyming words here, and here, and how he, like it just fascinates me, right?
Yeah.
So I've always had like a really big enjoyment in writing. And I think like people that want to get better at writing need to learn persuasive writing.
Mm.
Like if you can learn to be great at persuasive writing, you can be you can the content just skyrockets, right? So like when I say these things, like to bring it back into personal training and coaching terms, is like I use a lot of metaphors and analogies when I coach. And it's like on social media, I might use a metaphor that I use when I talk to clients all the time. And that metaphor might come from, hey, such and such is, like this is not an actual one, but just off the top of my head, it's like they're an accountant, right? Fuck, okay, well, let's talk about energy in, energy out with like budgeting,
Mm.
right? And it's like just being able to take fitness concepts and then try to relate them into something that they understand better. And that's something that, my social media content will come out, I'll start using things that I've just spoken with people before. And then um, it just makes things a little bit more relatable. So I don't know, things like that, like I really enjoy. I've read, like I do a bit of work with, Andrew Coates.
Yes, you said about him the other day. Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew's amazing on social media. He's a really good writer. So he used to write well, he still does. He writes like Men's Health and T Nation, and he's a phenomenal writer. So he's helped me a little bit as well recently, which is like to show you how important it is. I put up, and I say this, I put up a post that was like something about like bodybuilding is 70% being in a calorie surplus and only dieting when you need to, or because it's bodybuilding, we're not in
Mm.
a dieting contest. Like the best bodybuilders only diet when they need to, something on the lines of that, right? And then it ended up getting like 500, like traction wise, and I know this has nothing to do with sales, but indirectly it can. And it was like it had like 500 people like it and like 40 shares or something like that. And then I learned a couple things about sort of like decluttering. So like how to remove words that aren't necessary. And then, rereading it. Like if I take that word out, does anything change? No. Okay. Well, less words is going to get people's attention better.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden I rewrote that post and it was the exact same message, exact same post, but I removed, I think there was like 70 words in it. And I found out I actually removed like 29. So I almost halved it. And then I re-put it up and it got 5,600 likes, 2,800 shares, 1,500, and then traction. And then that also leads to, oh, this is a new audience I have to
Mm.
that I can build buy-in with now, right? And it's just things like that where it's like, I just did the same fucking thing like a few weeks later and it
Just
just
worked
went
on it.
absolutely crazy. Yeah. And it's like how you communicate things on social media. And this is like what we said at the start, right? Where we're like, everybody writes the same. Everybody tries to be super professional. And people forget that Instagram is an entertainment platform.
Yeah.
Like we're not writing fucking textbooks here for people to learn out of. You know, we're here to have a bit of fun. If they enjoy it, give value, but make
Mm.
it enjoyable. And it's like, cool, if they enjoy it, they're going to be more attracted to it. And if it's simple, people are going to share it because, they're like, oh, fuck, that's so simple. I can't believe I didn't think of that. I love that share. And then, it
Mm.
just draws in traction and stuff like that. So I think things like that, right? Like just learning how to declutter words, like get rid of things, how to use analogies, how to use metaphors. And then just, again, like we said with the training, is just simplify things. Like nobody, it's not like a dick measuring contest, right?
Yeah.
Like the amount of times you see the same fucking post and they're like, oh, the lengthened position, or this trains the lengthened position, this trains the shortened position. So when you're doing an exercise program, you got to add like this or that. And it's like your market doesn't give a fuck about that. You just bore the shit out of them, right? Just literally say, hey, this exercise and this exercise pair really well together.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, bang, got it, go. And it's really
What was
digestible.
that book you told me to buy? I ordered it and it was the writing book. I told you I asked you
Oh,
about.
it's called On Writing Well.
That's it. I'm writing well. Yeah, because
Phenomenal.
I asked you about how you write. I think just to scale back a second, I think one thing that really struck me from what you just said then is work on it, work on the skill. Like you haven't just you were a good writer anyway, but it's like, oh, funny enough, if I work on this thing and I saw your stuff and I was like, Rich, you write really well. How can I learn to write better? Then you
Right.
like buy this book, watch like make like cool, thank you. That's going to help me improve. I think people are too scared to kind of like, oh, how can I get better? Like, it takes nothing away from me. Like, if the only thing that's taken away from another thumbs up, the only thing that's taken away from me is if um I refuse to acknowledge that there's something I could work on.
Yeah.
And if I'm going, oh, how can I get better at this? Because this person's really good at it. Can I get better? I think there's you can always upskill yourself. I think is such a key element.
I think one of the other things with my writing is like I write, I vent. Like I said earlier, my Instagram is like I don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Like some of the best content like I would never call myself a content creator, but like some of the best people that put out really marketable and shareable information that's really valuable that can build your audience and build your trust and buy-in are they just write like they're talking to themselves. Like a note, like you said, a note to self, right? Like I vent on mine all the time, right? Like I'll be like, ah, this happened. Fucking bang, write it in, right? And it's not going to be the cleanest writing,
Yeah.
but it's relatable, right? Because
Mm.
it's like what's coming out of my mouth onto the paper. Um,
You know what?
so
Since
again,
I've started doing that, it's I used to think, like you said earlier, you need to be super professional. And I
yeah,
mean, I talk a lot of like drug content. There's an element of professionalism with that because I don't want to downplay it. I don't want to look like this is something that's a joke because it's not. But at the
yeah,
same time, you can get some personality across. And since I started sharing more memes and just being a bit more my personality, like it sounds stupid saying out loud, but obviously it's got more engagement. I've got more clients. I've like be yourself. I'm not saying you need to go down the trend of everyone's swearing and doing these ridiculous like rude analogies. You don't necessarily need to do that, but be yourself. And I think
yeah,
it goes into
authentic.
authenticity. Yeah, authenticity, like you just said, is so key. And I think as a coach, that authenticity then bleeds into your communication style with the client. It bleeds to everything, not just social media. To me, there's like benefits throughout.
Absolutely. 100%. And it's yeah, it's so important to like having buy-in from people. Like if they feel like they can relate to you,
Mm,
uh, and they feel like I always a really good example that I always use is like the best movies are movies that you emotionally connect with,
mm.
right? So it's the same thing when you write. Like the best books, I mean, there's not a lot of people read anymore, I'm finding out, which is kind of
No,
sad.
yeah,
But like the best books that draw you in are the ones that draw you in emotionally, right? So when you have the ability to do that in a few short words, something that you're very passionate about, you can put that out on social media and people buy into it, right? And it's like that's how you connect with people. And then, it's not like, oh, how many likes am I getting? How many shares am I getting? It's like real people go, oh yeah, you know what? I feel like that too. And
yeah.
and that's when you start
He's
picking
talking
up.
to me.
Yeah, that's when, like I always laugh because like, and I actually said this today to somebody, and it's like, do you know how I know if a post I've put up is being really successful? Like the engagement stuff is like a hard metric, but it doesn't really matter that much. But if I have a bunch of people that message me and go, is this about me? Like then I know, then I'm like, it's not. But if I made you feel a certain way about my post, it's a successful post.
It's a motive, and I've obviously got some sort of reaction out of it.
Yeah. So it's like you're now looking inside to yourself to go, that's something that I do. So without even doing anything except for me just putting my thoughts on paper, I've affected, a few people in a way that they've had to look at themselves and go, oh, that is something I do. Maybe I can get better. And that's what I'm trying to do. Right.
Yeah.
So it's not, again, like I don't have marketing strategies and I don't do any of that shit. Right. But I've grown it organically and
Mm.
it's worked for business. But at the same time, like I don't need it for business. But yeah, it's just, that's all when I write is, that's all I try to do. So,
No, I'd say
uh,
I love the way you write. It's one of those things like it's made me want to write better, seeing how you write, I'm
Yeah, I
thinking, well,
appreciate that.
that's something I can get better at. So, but
Oh,
we're like over an hour now. I was going to ask for some like quick takeaways for online coaches. Say like 5 things that they can use to improve themselves, and it can be hard skills, soft skills, books, anything that you think like these are 5 things that it'd be like an easy, low hanging fruit.
yeah. 5 things. Okay.
You can say 3
On
if you
your,
can't think of 5.
oh, no, I could probably get 10. On your check-in forms, try to word your questions so that you draw emotion out of people
Mm, like that.
rather than like, I can't stand the, rate this on 1 to 10 because there's
Yeah,
no emotion, right? So you get far more information when you let them talk. So same thing, be a listener on your check-in forms, give them areas to write because generally when they start, they'll just keep going. And you'll get far more information out of them and it'll be more personable. They'll feel like you care more and then your retention is going to be far better.
yeah.
So that's a huge one. Um, Another one would be if you're coaching general population, set an outcome goal. And this is one I just bang on about on social media so much. Set an outcome goal, which could be an end result, which could be, losing X amount of weight or lose weight by a wedding or gain, whatever it might be. But once that outcome goal is set, get rid of it. The less you talk about it, the better. And focus on process goals.
I
So
fucking love that. That's my favorite. That is my number one like thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So have a look at daily habits,
Mm.
right? So I have a form that's called the 100 point tracker. I'll actually send this to you after, and it has everything that you do in the day, and it's a point system. And things that are going to be counterproductive to your goals have negative numbers, and things that are productive have positive numbers. And I try to gamify their habits.
I love that.
So for them, it's like, all right, we need to get 100 points a day. And it could be like a certain level of sleep is 30 points, but if you're under a certain level of sleep, it's negative 30 points. And we try to gamify it. And
I
then,
fucking love that. That's brilliant.
yeah, so we might, and actually, this is something that we used in a pro basketball team. This is where I learned this. They did that because the basketball players just wouldn't fucking listen. And then they challenged, they made this as a game for them. And at the end of each month, whoever had the most days at 100 points would, not have to run suicides or something like that. And it worked phenomenally. So I modified that for my general population clients. So that's one way that I try to, and that's the only way I put out on social media. It's like my little trick that I give out. The rest of it's for clients.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that works really well in a way of gamifying their habits. And 9 times out of 10, if you just gamify the habits and they get to 100, they don't need anything else,
Yeah.
right? Like that alone will get a general population person. If there's 9,000 steps on the gamified tracker and 8 hours of sleep and 3 liters of water, and
You're
that
doing a
gets
lot
them
right.
and that gets them 100%. 9 times out of 10, if somebody's 20 kilos overweight, that's going to get 15 of them,
Mm.
right? Without anything else.
Yeah.
So that's really important to drive process goals and not focus too much on the outcome. It's not that you don't want to get there, but focusing on it usually leads to demotivation, especially if it's a longer term goal. So the more wins that you can create for a client, the better their adherence is going to be over the long term. So I always kind of look at it and say, yeah, we want to lose 20 kilos. Let's put that on the back burner. All right, what can we do today? What are we going to do? And those are the goals that if they tick those off, it just leads you. It's like getting on the highway and you're just going to drive straight to the result.
I'm just nodding here. I'm sitting there nodding, Rich, because this is all stuff I'm just like fucking like this is all the shit I do and I love. So yeah, keep talking my language.
I think a third one would be look at adherence. Adherence is far more important than people realize. I think there's a very negative trend in coaching right now of the whole, oh, they were a bad client. So a phrase that I always use, and I've told you this one, and I've actually said this probably on nearly every podcast I've ever been on, is the best coaches are blame takers and credit makers, not blame makers and credit takers. So when you're coaching people, not everybody's going to be robotic. So if you can always look at what you do and take blame for it, generally it'll open up more things for you to try rather than just write them off and go, well, they don't stick to the plan, right? look at your own coaching and, you know, try to break it down and be like, why did they not stick to it? What could I do differently? Right. And 9 times out of 10, you'll find a way.
There's a
My coach,
quote. Sorry, go
yeah,
on.
I was gonna say my coaches hate it because every time a client's not getting results, and I'll sit down with them and I'll be like, it's your fault. Like not in those words, but I'll be like, all
Yeah.
right, what can I do better? And they're like, well, they're not doing it. And it's like, yeah, but there's a
Did
reason
you
they're not doing
explain
it.
it well? Did you do all these other things?
Yeah. And also it's like, okay, what could you do differently?
Mhm.
Why are they not responding? Where's the roadblock? Okay, now we need to solve that one little roadblock, and then we might be able to get a big breakthrough.
I know you like a quote. So there's a quote we get. Well, I used to work in sales, right? And it's whenever you point a finger at someone, you've got three pointing back at you because you're doing that. So like whenever there's a problem, fuck me, this thumbs up. Whenever you're pointing a finger at someone, you've got to look at yourself because you've got three faces back at you. So the likelihood is it's probably something you're doing.
Absolutely. And it's not always, but you'll become a better coach by
You've got to be open
constantly.
to it.
Yeah, and you'll be a better coach because it's gonna force you to learn potentially new ways to look at things. And I think, even if on that odd occasion it's nothing else you can do about it, you'll at least learn potential new ways to deal with other clients. And then the more of that stuff you do, the better you get at coaching um, everybody, right? Because
Yeah.
like a lot of people have on soft skills, a lot of people have the same problems, right? Whether they're elite athletes or general population, a lot of them have the same similar problems that require the same similar fixes. The only problem with it, the only thing you have to do is get down to what the actual problem is. And listening, being relatable, being authentic, constantly critiquing yourself and trying to navigate roadblocks, I think are, whoever you train, that's going to get you a result. And that just makes you a better coach. And I think the longer you do that, the better the coach that you'll become.
That. What else you
Or is
got?
that
I got three
what
or
else?
four. Fuck.
I, I don't know. What else have I got? Other advice. Um, don't give unsolicited advice to other clients. Fucking hate that.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but you'll be a better coach if you just shut the fuck up and let people do their thing.
Yeah.
People will respect you more. Um, but yeah, I think like again, right? Like just learn what a coach is. One thing I always do, and this is going to go off topic just a little bit, but I think is really cool, right? Is I ask coaches like, what is a coach? And 9 times out of 10, coaches can't give me an answer. And it's like, if you can't define what you do, how can you do it to the best of your ability?
I don't know how I define that. I would
So,
say the way I would
so
define it.
we can do this together right now, right?
I'm
So,
going, mate. I'm going to go. I want to go for it and see if you think this answers shit. For me, I think a coach is a catalyst and facilitator for change. So you're there to make that process easier for someone and essentially to smooth the road down. So you're in my mind, I'm going, you tell me what the goal is, and I'm going to pave the way for you so you can walk it. That's the way I think about it as a coach. Because I've got the skills to do that, but you don't know how to do it. But I need to kind of show you the way, but I also need to lead the way. That's the way I kind of think of like a catalyst and facilitator for change.
that's a far better answer than I usually get.
But I had to think about it then, Rich. I was pressured on.
But that's good, right? Because if you go back and look at that in the essence, you can go back to it and go, okay, this is what I'm at the core. This is what I need to be doing, right?
Mm.
And it's like, am I actually every time somebody's not getting a result, it's like, fuck, am I doing that? What do I need to do to create
Yeah.
change? For me, right? Like, what is a if you Martin Rooney said it best for me on what a coach is, and he said to me, um, what do you call if someone's on a train and they're sitting in Australia, it's economy class, but if you're in the US, where do you sit? What's the name of it?
We ours is economy here in the UK.
Yeah. So in America, they'll say you sit in coach.
Okay.
Yeah. So a horse and cart back in the day, what was it? Where is it? What is it called in the before chariot? What was it called?
Probably a coach, wouldn't it?
You sit in coach. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do those things have in common with what we do? So they take somebody somewhere that they need to go, but they don't know the way.
I like that.
So for me, like in most, and again, this is coming, remember how we always talk about simplifying things?
Mm.
Yeah. So like that phrase right there is coach is when somebody is taken from point A to point B when they can't get there.
I like the fact that we've come at that exactly the same kind of way, two completely different
Yeah.
analogies, but we've kind of got the
Exactly.
same.
And this is
Yeah.
the communication side of it, right? Like
Mm.
to me, it's such a simple 3-year-old nursery rhyme
Yeah.
almost. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, now we've got a picture to it, right?
Mm.
Oh, it's a sitting in an airplane. Where are we going?
Yeah.
Okay, well, is and when you're in coach, the job is going from A to B, right? When they can't get there. And it's such a simple way. And that's my favorite way of looking at it. And it's like, because to me, like I love simple shit. And that simplifies it heaps for me. So again, like, you know, when I look at the core of what coaching is, and I ask them that, and I'm like, that is your job. And that is what a coach is, that is what a coach does. And every time you know, people get into the habit nowadays, especially of like, oh, you know, I'm giving them what they need and they're not doing it. And it's like, okay,
Are
but
you?
it's like, well, you might be giving them a manual car and they can only drive an automatic,
Mm.
right? So, um, you know, it could be something that's like, you know, you're trying to get them overseas, but you're giving them a bicycle,
Yeah.
right? You need to change what you're using to get them from A to B, which is changing your coaching style, and then you'll be able to get them there. And like that's some of the sort of like trying to break essentially what we do down to a core and simplicity. And it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, that is very simple. It's like, all right, well, let's do this with coaching then. Let's simplify it. Because right now you're trying to give them a bicycle and you're getting mad they're not going overseas with it when they can't get over water with that fucking thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what are we going to use? Now we need to find our airplane. And just sort of stuff like that, right? Like
Mm.
it's just
I like that.
simplifying and using analogies and using, like I said before, right? Like analogies and metaphors. Like I fucking love that stuff.
But that was fantastic. But honestly, I've taken so much from that, and I think the more coaches that think about these soft skills, I think the better industry we're going to have. Because
Yeah.
it's something that I talk about all the time, you talk about all the time, and maybe it's our background, maybe it's a sports background, maybe it's the fact that we've been doing this a long time, maybe it's because we're old as shit, right? But I do think there's an element of that. And on a side note, I imagine your retention of clients is very, very high.
Yeah, so my two things that determine a successful coach are results and retention.
Yeah. This is it. I see it, and I go on a tirade about this all the time. I see so many coaches only focusing on the marketing side, and you're like, you actually need to be a good coach. You know that, right? My average retention rate is 18 months with a client. I'm like, fuck that. I feel really good about that because that tells me they trust me, but I'm also getting them great results. Because the one thing about results, it's often, not always, but it's a time under the curve thing. It's like the longer you have with a coach, the better you're probably going to get because they know you and also you're committed to a process long term. Like I guarantee, I'm going to put words in your mouth here, Mitch, but the clients you've had the longest, I imagine you've probably seen the most transformative changes.
Yeah, and I have a few clients that honestly, um, they're they come in and they're maybe want body composition goals, but then they're leaving with so much more. Like I have one guy who's a surgeon, and
Mm.
he came in to coach with me 13 years ago, and he came in originally because he couldn't push patients and roll them over on his back without getting back pain, right? In 13 years, he does that fine. He deadlifts 155 kilos, which you know, was far beyond anything he's ever going to need in his life.
Mm.
He's run 2 marathons. He's trying to do, and this is like in 13 years, he's done all this shit. And he said to me the other day, and this was like maybe the best thing, one of the best compliments I've had as a coach ever, definitely in recent times. And he said, you know, if it wasn't for you, I don't think I would have even ever stayed at the gym. And it's like, to me, I'm like looking at that and it's like, fuck, yes, the retention's amazing. And it's like, but on a bigger scale to that, it's like, that's life changing.
You've changed someone's life. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, cool, this is, you know, if I skills of the job, yes, are really important, but at the same time, it's like, if you can just keep adherence long enough, people can create they can do amazing things,
Mm.
and it doesn't have to be like 0 to 100. They can do amazing things, and if you ask me, with that particular client, like, I don't know a time where we're like, "Fuck yeah, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna push it and do it," right?
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's like he just started enjoying stuff and doing it a little bit more, and the next thing you know, he's running a fucking marathon. And then, he's deadlifting 150 kilos, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, I could start pushing patients like 3 months ago." Um, but we've just made sure he's had a really fun
It's a
process,
change
and
change for someone's life is like, I think that,
yeah.
to me, that's another thing that coaches is too many times I think coaches focus on the materialistic outcomes of coaching. I'm making this money or I've got this social proof. To me, the best coaches, and maybe this might be my internal thing because this is how I think, and I think it's how you think, it's the change that you elicit with other people. And that
Yeah.
to me, when you said that story, but I had goosebumps on my arm because I was like, that's the reason you coach. And it like I literally got goosebumps on my arm. I don't know if you can see that, but they're all up because that it fires me up. I'm like, fuck, that's so cool. And that to me is coaching, where you care more about the client's results than what it is for you. And that's
Yeah.
the way I look at it.
That's what a real coach does.
Mm.
The end of the day. That's what it is, right? Like I always say it in the bodybuilding terms. It's like pro cards are cool, but progressing somebody over a long period of time. And I always talk about Dean McKillop in
Yeah.
bodybuilding for this. It's like, yes, Dean has like a huge amount of pro cards and he's been hugely successful. The reason Dean is so good is at coaching is, he's the first person to admit a lot of his guys that went pro are genetic freaks. But he sort of says, because I've got retention and because I've had the ability to train, you know, good people, it attracts other good clients because
Mm.
they go, ooh, these people are really good and they have buy-in and trust in him. And he's like, and that's what gets him to that point where he's at the top of the game and everybody wants to be like him. Um,
It makes me laugh
and
about Dean when you say that because even though he's at the top of the game, I think he's probably the most humble and underrated coach
oh,
within
100%.
bodybuilding. In my opinion, I think if Dean had an ego, and obviously he's a confident guy, he's very confident in his own abilities, and you know him a lot better than I do, but I've met him a couple of times. If he advertised like anyone else, I think he'd be one of the best coaches in the world in terms of like name, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Dean,
Um,
Dean, to me, so Dean, funnily enough, Dean used to play professional soccer.
that doesn't surprise me. He's got that sort of like,
Go figure.
yeah.
Go figure, right? Like his mentality.
Mm.
Dean to me is the most in Australia. I know he doesn't live in Australia anymore, but in Australia, I think I would argue and say one of the most complete coaches I've ever seen.
Mm.
uh, in terms of social proof, buy-in, authenticity. The way he communicates is on another level. And I think, if more coaches, I wish Dean would do more education, but he loves coaching. So I
Yeah,
get
this
it,
is
right?
it.
I totally get that. But yeah, because, the way he's not overly emotional, which is, I think, is another thing that's really important with clients. Don't go too high over the wins, don't go too low over the losses. He goes in and he cares about his clients and he just ticks boxes. And he's done it so well for such a long period of time that it's where he is now.
Yeah,
He's
I
not
love that.
never tried to be a 0 to 100 guy. He's never tried to be the best. He's just tried to be the best for his clients. And I think, you want one more lesson before we finish up. And I think that's probably one of the best ways to sum it up is like, don't try to don't try to get results to try to, oh, this will look good on social media. Don't try to be the best coach. Like I think it's a same in bodybuilding. Don't try to be the best bodybuilder. Try to be your best. If
Mm.
you're a coach, just try to be the best. What is it? Steve Magnus says, he's like, don't ever focus on being the best, focus on being the best at getting better.
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's and that's I think, if you can just take that attitude into coaching and constantly remind yourself about that, you can remove and strip away so much bullshit ego that like does a disservice to your own coaching ability and will allow you to, I guess, stay humble and just want to get better for your clients, and you do that long enough and you have enough experience, you get there.
Yeah, love that,
You
man.
don't even realize it. You just get there. Like it's just, people say with me all the time, and Perth is a small place, but there are a lot of people who come up and they'll be like, oh, you're known as like one of the best coaches in Perth. And like, I just don't even, I write that off straight away. Like, I don't even think about it. It's like, I know lots of coaches that are fucking incredible here. But when you strip away ego and it's like, well, it's nice to hear, but I'm just going
Yeah,
to keep
sure, yeah.
trying to get the best results I can for clients. And, you do it long enough and then all of a sudden people kind of,
No,
give you the
yeah.
recognition for it, right? And it's like, you don't try to get it.
Well, speaking of recognition, Rich, where can everyone find you? Instagram, etc. Where can they find
Yeah,
you?
so you can come and follow along with my ramblings on social media at Richard_physique code. Um, so yeah, that's basically my personal page where I just launch thoughts on it every single day.
And I have to
Um,
say it makes very good reading. I'll link you in the description and like below when I post this
appreciate
up.
that.
So
Yeah, so that there, and then my business page is at Physique Code. So that's where I'll put up a lot of my client results and what's happening within the business. But yeah, a lot of people seem to enjoy my ramblings.
I love
So
it. Can we talk about your next venture, or is that secret for now? Secret squirrel.
secret right now.
Okay. Well, I'll say to everyone listening, Rich is working on something pretty fucking cool, and I was
Not
like,
yet. It's
you need to
coming.
do
You'll
this.
see it.
I'm
You'll
bigging
see
you up before it comes out, but like, I'm excited for what this is going to do for
It's
people.
it's
I'll say
gonna
no
be
more.
a game changer.
I'm saying no more, but I'm very excited. I think it's going to be fantastic. So, mate, honestly, thank you so much for coming on. I think there's so much practical takeaways here. We're speaking the same language, and it's been really informative for me as well, man. So, thank you very much for coming on.
Appreciate you having me on, man. I had a
Cheers,
lot of
brother.
fun.
Right, I'm gonna